On everyone. I was mentally prepared to help out and do an NHL stream for somebody else today, and that kind of fell apart. So I decided I was going to do it anyway. Just going to fire off some lineup builds using SaberSim, and going to go over some projections and some, just some other stuff here. And again, there could be changes between now and lock, but again, the more practice I get doing these builds and analyzing these things, the better. So we're sharing SaberSim right now. And again, the first thing I like to do is at least just gaze at the totals here, just to see what I would imagine would show up. And already you see these late night hammer games, these Calgary, Columbus with a 6.5 total, Edmonton and Vegas with a 6.6 total. I mean, you'd imagine that that's going to probably dominate the proceedings here. Then you got the Florida, Pittsburgh right there at 6.5. So those are the three main teams, I guess. But you know how it goes with Sims and things like that. It's just not like basketball. You just don't make the best plays. I was also having some discussions with some cats on another Discord about lineup construction with respect to stacking, and I've been preaching this for quite a long time. But with hockey, I do believe that SaberSim as well, but certainly traditional optimizers really underestimate the value of hockey correlation. I almost always just demand of my stacks to be either 4 threes or higher, 4 threes or 5 twos or sixes. Again, small sample size maybe, but I've just had a lot of success getting full takedowns with those really highly correlated lineups. And I know all of the arguments about, well, yeah, in a really big slate, you could do that, but not so much in a smaller slate. I get it. And it sounds like something that's instinctive. But one of the things that I preach quite a bit is the value of these sims, both post and pre contest sims. Yes, they're very valuable to help you learn how to build lineups and what to play, but they're extremely good as a learning tool, to figure out what about DFS is real and what is phantom. What about DFS lore is just lore, and what about DFS lore is actually, actionable. You come into DFS with certain ideas about how you're supposed to play and what types of lineups are supposed to work. And so few of them have actually ever been tested and back tested and front tested and side tested and whatever. We think that we know what's supposed to work. But one of the things that the advent of the Sims have taught us is that a lot of what we think is just not the case. We thought about in football for a long time that you needed to have run backs with your wide receivers, with your stacks. And it turns out over the last couple of years, it's been proven, whatever. It's been statistically, argued that it's simply just not the case. And I feel as though the Sims are going to prove the value of correlation in hockey to be extremely stronger than people thought. Baseball as well, baseball. They're the same sport as far as I'm concerned. You just the more correlation you can come up with, the better. And to me, it applies even to smaller slates. Yeah, sure, not to the same degree, but I still think it's important. So let's take a look at the projections, okay, first. And one thing I really think is really cool about hockey, baseball as well, actually, is that the delta between what the good plays are and the plays you actually play is very, very high. And even the stacks, like the stacks that look good as opposed to the stacks you actually play, is really high. And then when you apply the sims, I found the delta between the lineups that you would play without sims and the lineups you play with sims is also extremely high. So it just throws, you know, a another decision into the mix that actually has quite a bit of leverage to it. You know, like if you decide that you're going to run hockey lineups and use, say, the Saber score metric as opposed to using the Sims, you're really making a big decision about what types of lineups you're playing. You're almost never going to have overlap between those two constructs. So again, anything that requires a decision that's going to have serious impact to me is kind of fun. Like in basketball, okay, it's fine. You know, if you think that someone's going to have 31.9 minutes instead of 30.8 minutes, and their projection is going to go up by 0.6, and you end up getting 31.2% of them instead of 27%, and that's your way of getting different, fine. Okay. You want to play, run 150 lineups using Saber Score and then apply the Sims, and instead of getting, 28%, Jonas Valanciunas, you're going to get 31%. Fine. But hockey and baseball, this is where the action is. In hockey, like on a slate like tonight, completely dependent on what type of settings you use, it's going to completely drive your exposure. I mean, it's like total rocket ship theory. Like if your settings on a rocket ship are 1 millimeter off, you're going to go, instead of Mars, you're going to go to Pluto. Okay. And that's kind of what happens with hockey. So, I mean, for fun, let's take a look at the projections here. And I think this is, well, it's still only 4:00, so there's plenty of time for stuff to get moving here. But we'll take a look. And if you were just going based on projections, you'd see, okay, Kadri just extremely strong up here. And I'm listed by Sheets value score, which I'm not really going to get into too much, but it's a combination of points per dollar and just raw fantasy points. So Calgary, he looks like a great play. And then Sharangovich, whoever that is, he looks like a good play too at 4,400. And theoretically, right, All-Star. Theoretically, you have two really good plays. You have a 4,400, a 4,900. They rate really well. Then you got this issue of what line they're on. And that's a problem, because you really want to have as much correlation as possible in hockey. Now, that doesn't mean you can't play these guys as one-offs or whatever, but just kind of be careful about that. The other thing you see when you just kind of eyeball this, what I like to do is I like to eyeball it and see, all right, so what do I think would show up? Well, we're trying to find guys that rate well, that are kind of on the same team, that are up here. So, look at this. You got a couple of 3 Edmonton guys. Are they on the same line though? Even McDavid's a 1-1, and then Nurse is a 2-2 and a 2-1. So it's nasty. And then you got Florida. Let's see. So Florida's okay. Florida looks like the one that would suit me, because it's got 3 guys. They're all in the top, 20 as far as my ratings go, and they're all on at least the number 1 power play line. So like if you were going to use this to like kind of hand build, I guess just really close your eyes, and I would go these 3 Floridas, maybe Kachuk because he's on the power play line as well, and then we kind of start with this. But that's no fun. We're trying to find stacks. We're trying to find like groups of players, that's not just the top plays. So the next thing I look at is my stack ratings here. Again, this is not what I'm going to play, but this is what I'm going to look at. And I kind of rate these in the following ways. Like I'll rate the stacks first as far as just pure raw points. So I'll sort it by, say, raw stacks, and it will give me the top 5 for each team that has the most points. So, like, for example, if the contest was going to be who are the top 5 guys from any team on the same line that are going to score the most fantasy points without any care for price, it would be Colorado, by a decent amount. by a full 7 points projected. Then I'll take a look at, say, this middle column, which is value stack, which is basically points per dollar, right? So if I were going to, the contest was going to be just pick the 5-man stack that's pretty much on the same line, that's going to score the most fantasy points per dollar. It would be Washington, okay? And then maybe Edmonton or whatever. And then on the right, we have this modified stack rating, which kind of combines the two in a semi-intelligent way, using that Sheets value score metric I just sort of alluded to. And when you do it that way, again, Colorado and Washington, I guess for different reasons, right? And then Florida. So if you had to put all this together and you didn't want to run sims, you didn't want to do anything, what you expect to see, Colorado, Washington, and Florida. And then if you wanted to say, put it all together and hand build, as far as goalies go, my philosophy is just play the cheapest goalie that projects well enough, that projects well enough. It's not going to be going against your favorite stack. So maybe somebody like Gustafsson, Spencer Knight, they're under 8K, so that's pretty good. So if I were to hand build, that's what I would do. I'd play one of these guys, probably do some combination of Florida, Washington, Edmonton, or whatever, and then just kind of be done with it. But again, what fun is that? Let's go to SaberSim and let's see what we would get if we use my projections into SaberSim using all kinds of different metrics. So let's just start. So let's upload my custom projections in here. Who's texting me during the hockey preview? Probably something about this earnings report I'm supposed to be listening to. All right, so let's first we exclude the unlisted players. We're not right now going to automatically create custom fields for ownerships. I'm not that good. I'm not going to be able to. You want to know what? You want to try it? Let's try it. So we're going to create our custom fields, and we'll save this as new stuff. So what this is going to do, if I'm right about the new about the new SaberSim, is it's going to create this another field based on my ownerships. I presume that's what it's going to do. Now, so it's creating this field of lineups. Is that what is happening here? All right, we'll get back to that then. Okay, field lineups. We'll just get back to that. So let's go back and we'll upload this, and let's build the lineups. Okay, boom. So we're going to build 5,000 lineups, and then the fun part begins. Now, 5,000 lineups in a 100-game slate, which is what this is not a lot, but it's fine. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 5,000 lineups in an 11-game slate. It's not even guaranteeing me that it has all the lineups I need to choose from, really. But it's at least something, And you know what? If I need to get to the 5,000 and first lineup, I don't want to live in that world, I don't think. But you can make 10,000 lineups over, you use separate builds and do that. But so here's 5,000 lineups. And so the question is, what is this? All right, well, let's see. What is this? Well, first of all, you'll see there's 202 lineups here. Do you know why there's 202 lineups here listed? Because I already put in my contest that I'm playing into this tab by uploading them from SaberSim, from DraftKings. And again, just to show you guys how to do that, in case you haven't done that before, you click this arrow here, and then you could download from DraftKings, and it automatically creates this file for you up here. Well, or wherever you keep your downloads. And then we will upload that into here. If we'll overwrite them, and the lineups are now kind of in the memory. Okay. All right. So these are the 5,000 lineups we built, and it's rating the top 200 in a certain way. Well, what way is that? Well, it's defaulting this thing that says large slate 10K to 50K. So what is that? That is SaberSim's interpretation of what good upside lineups will look like given the slate size. Okay. So, like, for example, you go to Saber Score, large slate 10K, 5K, 50K. Now, what you can do is you can dive further into this by clicking this eyeball here. And the eyeball, what that does, it will show you what the formula is that it's using to calculate these lineups. So, not to get too far into the weeds here, but a couple of things to note is that this number, 0.8 times the 95th percentile outcome, that's not bad. It's pretty aggressive. It's not, you could change all this. You could change all this to, instead of 95th, you can make this 99th, for example, and get a whole different world, right? And then the other thing, it says it's minus 0.5 times the average adjusted ownership. Now, to not give too much of a SaberSim lesson, but adjusted ownership is, again, SaberSim's kind of take on ownership for a player based on what type of standard deviation that player tends to have. This is what you're paying for when you use SaberSim, right? Is their metric that they have created that they have back tested. Okay. Now, is this perfect? No, of course not. Otherwise, everybody would just use it and there'd be no edge. But I recommend that you cede your expertise to those that have demonstrated it. In other words, SaberSim, and even whatever you use, as far as an optimizer or a contest simulator or whatever, I would be very cautious about making changes to this type of thing. Okay. They did a lot more work than you did in figuring out that this is a good formula. So to screw around with it is just asking for trouble. Now, with that said, I ask for trouble all the time. Okay. In MMA, I've created like 4 different custom metrics to try to improve. And quite honestly, hasn't really helped. So I would accept the fact that this type of rating is a very strong GPP type build. Okay. So if you didn't want to use the Sims, okay, you could almost just fire this and be well within your rights. Okay. Now, if you do that, here are some issues. Okay. All right. Number one, we haven't done any tweaking of the players. Like, if you didn't, what if you didn't like how much you were getting of Aaron Ekblad? You haven't changed any of that. Second thing, you haven't even looked at what type of stacks that you're going to use if you just fire this. Okay. The other thing is that your default here is min uniques 1, which theoretically gives the possibility that your concentration of players is going to be very high, and you run the risk of being not as diverse as you should be. Okay. Now, with all those things that you can change, what do I recommend that you change? Okay. Because I am more of an automation guy. I change as much less than probably any, say, professional or any decent player. Okay. A lot of good players make a lot of changes based on their takes. I make far fewer than most. So let's talk about at least what I will change. So it used to be that I would be very, very adamant about going min uniques, maybe as many min uniques as possible to give me as much diversification as possible without sacrificing, overall projection equity of the portfolio. Now, I still do that, but again, if you trust your SaberSim, you trust your Sims, or you trust your lineup builders, SaberSim, the guys at SaberSim have told me that they've actually done a better job in dealing with this min unique issue on a portfolio level so that you don't really have to jam as much min uniques as you used to. Yet still, I feel as though, I guess being a hedge fund guy, the more diverse you can get without sacrificing anything or too much, the better. So I would change your min unique settings here. And what you have to keep in mind when you change this or when you change anything is what effect it is having on this portfolio. So how do you know? Like if you went from min uniques 1, say, to min uniques 2, how do you know how that's affected your overall portfolio unless you have some type of measuring stick? So at the non-sim level, one thing you can do, and we'll get to the sims in a minute, is do this thing where you put in average and aggregate metrics. You put average projected score. And right here, this shows the average projection of 99.1. So what this is kind of like a barometer that will kind of keep you in check. In other words, like here at Min Uniques 1, your average projection is 99.1. You want to make it as many uniques as possible without sacrificing this. So here, you go to Min Uniques 2, and then you check this out. If it goes from 99.1, it really didn't affect it at all. So no reason to not go Min Uniques 2. Now at Min Uniques 3, again, it doesn't really affect it at all. Then you go to Min Uniques 4, and it really didn't affect it at all. And that's not surprising on a big slate like this. And finally, it affects it a little bit, but here, as you can see, you can go all the way to Min Uniques even 6 before it even does anything. So on a non-sim level, this is something I really recommend, is by going as many Min Uniques as you can without it affecting your overall kind of portfolio. Now, one thing that you'll see, though, is that your total lineups it's even giving you is 194. And that's a little bit concerning because you had 5,000 lineups to choose from, and it still couldn't get you 208. So you should probably scale back the Min Uniques, okay, the 202, to a level where at least it gives you your number of lineups comfortably. Now, I'm going to share this kind of little technique that Jordan from SaberSim shared with me with respect to this type of thing, is that if you get to a point where SaberSim yells at you that you don't even have enough lineups to make the 5,000, don't go back to that minimum, like Min Uniques 4. Let's review. So at Min Uniques 5, it yelled at you, right? It went from 202, or when it went to Min Uniques 6 or whatever. So instead of going back to Min Uniques 4, you should go back one more to Min Uniques 3. And then you should be in business. So with respect to the Min Uniques, go ahead. You should be good to go. And that is a change that I'll make. And the next change that I will make is in stack exposure. And what I will do, again, based on my speech I gave earlier, is I will literally X out anything that's not a 5-2, a 4-3, or a 6. Okay. It's just my opinion that all of the optimizers and all of the stuff just underestimates the value of correlation. So these are going to be X'd. So in SaberSim, it's easy. You go X or uncheck, 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 even 150 lineups. Okay, uncheck, 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 uncheck. We're going to uncheck all of this. Hit apply. And then over those 5,000 lineups, it has now re-rated them based on all of these stacks. And you still have the right amount of Min Uniques. You still have the right stacks. And now what you could do is you could just fire this right into the build, okay? Right into the lineups. Now, one thing that I have not done is even looked to see who we have, as you'll notice. And not to do this as a magic trick, but the fact of the matter is that I don't look. And the reason for that is it's really philosophical. Like if you are going to build a process and you really are going to trust that process, you should not question it based on the outputs. Okay. So for me, I don't look at who we have. I don't look at whether I have 80% of a guy or 2% of a guy. I don't care if I have 74% of a stack versus 0. None of that matters to me. Now I'm going to show you what we have. The only reason is so that we can compare it to what this would look like if we change the settings based on the sims. So like right now, based on this, unsimmed, but we tweak for min uniques, we tweak for stacks, we'd be getting 35% Washington and 29% Florida. And to be honest, this is not much different than my whatchamacallit, than my projections, right? We talked about this, the Washingtons, the Floridas, the Calgarys. And it's funny, I guess they found the right stacks as far as Calgary goes. So I want you to remember this, right? 35% Washington, 29% Florida, 90% Calgary, as we then do this completely differently by using the sims. So let's do that. Let's hit run contest sims. And what it's doing, okay, for those that have watched this the first time, is it is taking our 5,000 lineups and simulating the results of those lineups against the field of lineups that SaberSim is identified is appropriate for that particular contest. To that point, we'll go into this contest field, and what this is doing is in the contest field, this indicates what the field is that it's going to be comparing your 5,000 lineups to. Now, you could click through this and see what that is, but that is way too into the weeds for me. Okay. So now it's simmed. Okay. Hold on a minute. Let's go back and let's do this one more time. 04 is getting mad at me a little bit. No, it's not getting mad. 4, okay. Wow, and look at what just happened. So, again, I'm only showing you this because what I'm getting to illustrate the difference between what you get when you use Sims and what you get when you don't. Now, remember, it's not as if we were just playing with the optimals, right? SaberSim, we looked at the formula, right? And SaberSim, it created this formula that supposedly gives good upside lineups, and not only that, but it also, remember that formula where it dinged the lineups for adjusted ownership? Well, technically, that would mean that those would be sort of unpopular. But when we run it with the Sims, where we're comparing our lineups to what they think everybody's going to play, who are these people? We're getting 25% San Jose, 21% Carolina, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Now, let's go back. We'll do the same thing we did before with the min uniques. But here's another little thing you could do here. Instead of comparing, well, you could do it to all, but instead of comparing your builds based on average projection, there's this other thing, this min or median destination ROI that you can check out to see how far that is impacted by your uniqueness. So if you go from min uniques 1 to min uniques 2, it goes, the min destination ROI goes from 53 down to 49. All right, that's not trivial, actually. Then it goes from 49 to 39, which is actually pretty big. And then it goes from 39 down to 17. So we got to be careful, but I still think that we can get away with going min uniques 3. Okay. So if you were going to play it this way, using the Sims, we'd be getting all kinds of stuff. You'd be getting top owned stack would be the team with the lowest total, or second lowest. Well, actually, that's not true. Second or third lowest total. Once again, we've got to go to stack exposure, make sure that this is all kosher. Yep, we're still getting nothing but 5 2s, 4s, 3s, and 6s. And the last decision you have to make is whether to use direct fill or autofill. So what direct fill will do with SaberSim is you can actually go here. Hold on. Direct fill. Well, if the arrow worked, hold on. Yeah. So this allows you to take your lineups and put them in exactly in what order you want. You know, like you have 202 lineups. If you just direct fill to all these, if your lineup, let's say you had a lineup that was going to appear in, say, all 4 of these, then it would be duplicated, you know? But what I find useful is this autofill option. And again, we talk about, preconceived notions and biases and what we think we want to do in DFS. I know it's tempting for people to take their favorite lineup and put it in everything. But if you're really going to use the Sims appropriately, you want to make sure that first of all, you want to make sure that the lineups that you play are appropriate for the tournaments that you're playing. So just because something looks good in the energy line doesn't make it necessarily look good in the cross-check special. Now direct fill does take care of that. In other words, if you went to direct fill and you hit save to contests, it would save them to the appropriate contests. But if you went to autofill, that actually maximizes your diversity a little bit more. So let me tell you what happens for those of you who don't know in autofill, right? So you have this order of lineups right here. This order of contests. And we've already simmed against all these. So it's just a question of what lineup goes where. And if you run it on autofill, what's going to happen is this. It is going to first run the energy line contest sim. And then I only have one lineup here. So it's going to put one lineup in there. And then you know what it's going to do? It's going to take that lineup out of the pool. And then it's going to rerun everything for the poke check special. And then what it's going to do, it's going to put, top 150 that's sim to that, take all of those out of the pool, and then run the cross-check special. And then only after those 50 get taken out, then you run the world, the world championship one. So you have to be careful if you run autofill what to do here. You have to order these in a certain way. So what I like to do, and this is again from Jordan at SaberSim, is I will sort this by fee. The idea being that if there's a lineup that's going to sim for all these contests, where do I want to make sure it goes before it disappears from the pool? Okay. And when you sort by fee, it makes sure that, your biggest buy-in at least is going to make sure you're going to have your top lineup. So energy line is going to get the first one. Let's just say that it was going to appear in all of them. Right. And then the championship gets the second one. And then not till the very end do we have to deal with the 150. Okay. So if I were going to use the Sims, I would just do this. I would literally just go boom, save the contest. And you see this thing turn green? Goes like this. Upload. And up we go. Okay. Now, what's fun is that I know what people are saying. Okay, so you've given us two options, and one option that's completely sound looks nothing like the other one. What do you do? Like how do you play? I mean, I would contend, first of all, that both sets of lineups work. Okay. I would contend that I would be content with playing all of those lineups, and you can go ahead and just choose. Okay. That's my opinion. Now, the other thing that you have to consider, and this is for a completely different conversation, okay, is this. Boy, this is like another 3 hours, but the way you analyze DFS, what real super beginners do is they analyze it on a player level. In other words, if someone's a good player, they'll play him. Fine. The second level of analysis is whether someone is a good like DFS player, and not just a good player, but a DFS player, and that's fine. The third level is, are they a good DFS player today? Right? Like, is their salary good? So they are a good DFS player today at this salary. And that's analyzing things on an individual play level, like an individual player level. And that is what 95% of content is identifying who is a good play. Okay. And that also corresponds with stacking as well. So level, I guess, 3A is identifying whether a stack is a good play. Okay. So that's analyzing something from a play level. Now, if you really want to be, in my opinion, like advanced, beginner, intermediate, maybe even low expert, you won't even analyze things that way. You'll analyze them on a lineup level. Okay. You won't analyze plays on a play level. You'll analyze your lineups on a lineup level. And a good example of it, well, maybe it's not good because it didn't work, but I talked about this in the NFL over the weekend. I mean, there was these two plays, David Moore and Adonai Mitchell, right? And on their surface, neither one of them looked great. Okay, they just didn't. But on a lineup level, they made the rest of your lineups work so well that they became part of good lineups. Okay. And that's really important, is to analyze your DFS play on a lineup level, not just on a play level. And yes, it's true that good plays become good lineups, sort of. Okay. But if you analyze things on a lineup level, you're really becoming a good player. Now, if you really want to be super expert, okay, and then you're going to be into my world, my real life world, is not even look at it in terms of lineups, but look at your play in terms of portfolios. Okay, so the idea of combining lineups in a way that your portfolio makes sense. And now we're talking about contest sims, and we're talking about correlation between lineups. We talk about this with MMA quite a bit. Like if you like two guys on opposite sides of a fight, okay, they both could be good plays, but you play them together, 50% one, 50% the other, one of them could end up with a 0, the other one can get up 100. And maybe you don't want to do that in only one lineup, but when you're playing, a bunch of lineups, you want to make sure that you have that max variance. Okay. So that's the real future. And that's what the contest sims is really about, I think, is trying to analyze your lineups in a portfolio level. And that's hard. Okay. And one day that will be the next source. But for right now, people are talking about plays and play level. That's fine. So when people ask me, oh, do you like this guy today? It means nothing to me. Okay. And it's similarly when someone asks me about a stock. What do you think about Microsoft? I mean, it literally doesn't mean anything without context. It doesn't mean anything without context of what the rest of the lineup, right, and the rest of the portfolio, right, is going to look like. So, the last thing that I will leave you guys with, we still have a lot of people in here. So as long as I have everybody's attention before I get out of here, I want to share one other thing with you, is that you have an opportunity between 7 and 8 and 8 to 9 to late swap and 9 to 10. I don't want to get into a holy war with anybody about this, but I am 100% sure of this, that when you have a late swap sport, you should be late swapping every opportunity that you have. regardless of how your lineups are doing, regardless of whether you're doing well, regardless of whether you're doing poorly, you should always be late swapping, because whenever, and this will be another discussion, I guess, but whenever you have more information than you had when you originally built your lineups, you should always make adjustments. Always. One day we'll have a whole discussion of the Monty Hall problem, which is going to cast a little more light on this. But the fact is that now that you have these tools that will tell you what people were owned, that's the 7:00 games, and keep track of how they've scored, you are almost 100% guaranteed to do better by switching based on that information than keeping it as is. Now, do you know who you're going to switch it to? No, it's hard, but you're almost certainly going to do better in the long run making those adjustments. So that is the last thing I'm going to leave you with today. At 6:00, I'm going to be going with Bobby on True DFS to talk about the NBA. And my process there is very similar, although the NBA is boring. NBA is just who has good projections, who can react to news the fastest, whatever. It's hard. I mean, it's hard, but it's boring. Hockey is definitely more interesting because it I don't know. It's just more interesting to me. Anyway, that's all I have. I appreciate everybody coming out here, and continue to subscribe to all the channels, I guess. And hopefully you guys learned something from this.